They say money can't buy happiness, but what if it can't even buy you back the one person who truly saw you? I had everything: private jets, island retreats, a Fortune 500 company. But I lost her, and now I'd trade it all for one more conversation with the woman who walked away. If you've ever felt rich in things but poor in love, this story will change how you see success forever. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell, because what I learned from losing the only real thing in my life might save yours. I was 35 years old when I realized that $5 billion couldn't buy me a good night's sleep. Yeah, you heard that right, $5 billion. Made every dollar from scratch, starting with a maxed-out credit card and a dream that kept me up for 72 hours straight. By 28, I had my first million. By 32, my first 100 million. By 34, Forbes was calling me the boy wonder of Silicon Valley. But let me tell you something. Those same magazines don't show you the pictures of me wandering through my 40-room mansion at 3 a.m., wondering why the echo of my own footsteps felt like the loneliest sound on earth. Success tastes like champagne and regret. I had private jets that could take me anywhere, but nowhere felt like home. I threw parties where A-list celebrities fought for invitations, but I'd find myself hiding in my study, staring at empty contracts that somehow felt more honest than the fake smiles downstairs. Every business victory felt like stealing, not from others, but from myself. I'd close billion-dollar deals and celebrate alone, raising a glass to an empty room, wondering if this was all there was to winning. Then I met her. It was at the most unlikely place, a community bookstore in Harlem, miles away from my usual haunts. I was there because my therapist told me to find real people for once. She was behind the counter, wearing a faded Howard University sweatshirt, her natural hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold. They looked right through my $1,000 suit like it was made of glass. When I tried to pay for my book with a platinum card, she handed me back a pen and said, "Here, you can autograph it instead. I know who you are, but in here, you pay like everyone else." Nobody had spoken to me like that in years. What happened next changed everything. I found myself going back to that bookstore every week, not for books, but for her. While other women would melt the moment I mentioned my net worth, she'd roll her eyes and ask if I'd ever read Baldwin or Morrison. She'd make fun of my expensive shoes getting scuffed on her worn wooden floors, and for the first time in years, I felt grounded, real. Our first real conversation lasted 4 hours. I'd come in to buy some business biography, and she'd insisted I needed actual literature, not just another billionaire's playbook. She handed me Invisible Man and said, "Maybe this will help you understand what it's like to be truly seen." That night, instead of reviewing contracts, I read every page. The next day, I returned, just to tell her she was right. We started having lunch together, not at my usual 5-star restaurants, but at her favorite soul food place on 125th Street. Between bites of her grandmother's recipe mac and cheese, she told me about her world, how she'd grown up in Albany, Georgia, with a mother who cleaned hotel rooms and a father who worked double shifts at the post office just to send her to college, how she'd come to New York with nothing but a degree in English literature and a dream to open her own bookstore, how every book on her shelves had been carefully chosen, not for profit, but for the lives they might change. Something shifted in me when she talked. Her passion for helping kids in the neighborhood, her pride in showcasing Black authors, her faith in the power of words. It made my billion-dollar ventures feel hollow and small. She noticed details I'd forgotten existed, like the way I tapped my pen when I was nervous or how my voice changed when I talked about my childhood. She remembered my coffee order and my favorite passages from the book she recommended. For the first time, someone was paying attention to who I was, not just what I was worth. I fell for her in the quiet moments, the ones worth more than any stock portfolio could ever be. She introduced me to her world. Sunday dinners with her family in Brooklyn, Church services where her aunt led the choir, community meetings where she'd speak up about library funding. I found myself in rooms where my billions didn't matter, where I was just Tasha's friend from the bookstore. Her dreams were beautifully simple, yet impossibly complex. She wanted to expand her bookstore into a literacy center for at-risk kids. She'd sketch floor plans on napkins during our lunches, showing me where the tutoring tables would go, where they'd have story time, where local authors could give talks. Her eyes would light up describing how she'd name it after her grandmother. When I offered to write a check for the whole project, she looked at me like I'd insulted her. "This is my dream," she said. "I need to build it myself." But what I couldn't understand then was that she was building me too. She taught me to see myself clearly for the first time in years. She'd call me out when I was posturing, when I was performing the role of successful businessman, even in private. "Just be you," she'd say. "Not Forbes magazine you, not board meeting you, just you." The problem was, I'd forgotten who that was. We were so different, yet somehow perfectly aligned. While I lived for quarterly reports and market predictions, she lived for the moment she'd see a child pick up their first favorite book. She couldn't care less about my yacht in Monaco, but she'd get excited when she found a first edition of Toni Morrison. She saw wealth differently, not in bank accounts, but in knowledge shared, in communities lifted up, in generations changed through education. I started seeing the world through her lens, and for the first time, I understood what real success looked like. It wasn't about building empires, it was about building people up. That's when I knew I was in love, not just with her, but with the person I became when I was with her. But love doesn't exist in a vacuum, and neither do billionaires. The warning signs came wrapped in gold plating, missed dinners because of emergency board meetings, shorter phone calls because I had to jump on a call with Tokyo, cancelling weekend plans because the IPO needed my attention. I convinced myself these were temporary sacrifices. "After this deal, we'll have more time," became my mantra, a promise I made to us both. She began to pull away in small ways I pretended not to notice. The texts that used to flood my phone throughout the day dwindled to polite check-ins. Her laugh didn't come as easily. When I'd arrive late to her bookstore, she'd greet me with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I remember one night, arriving 45 minutes late to her birthday dinner, only to find her sitting alone, candle burned down to a stub. "I ordered for both of us," she said quietly. "I knew you'd be late." The cracks grew wider. I'd promised to help paint the new children's section on Sunday, then cancel when a business opportunity in Dubai couldn't wait. I'd planned surprise getaways, then cut them short because my company stock was fluctuating. She stopped asking me to family functions, stopped calling when she needed advice, stopped sharing her dreams for the bookstore expansion. We were still together, but we'd become experts at emotional absence. The breaking point came on an ordinary Tuesday. We were supposed to have dinner to discuss our future, a conversation we'd postponed 3 times. I was rushing to finish a conference call with investors when she walked into my office unannounced. She stood there in her simple dress, clutching her bag like it held every word she'd been holding back. "Choose," she said, her voice steady despite tears I'd never seen before. "Choose right now. This deal that can wait tomorrow, or us, which can't." I looked at my watch, an instinct so ingrained it defined me. The call with investors could make or break a $20 million venture. "This call will only take 20 minutes, I said. "Can we talk after dinner?" She smiled then, but it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. "We just did," she whispered, and walked out of my office forever. 2 days later, I bought a 3rd private jet. 6 months later, I had doubled my company's valuation. That summer, I was named CEO of the Year by 3 different magazines. Success without meaning is just expensive misery. I threw myself into work with a hunger that scared my executives. 18-hour days became my norm. Weekends disappeared. Sleep was the enemy. If I was lying awake, Might as well make another billion. The empty mansions multiplied. I bought a penthouse in London for business, a villa in Monaco for tax purposes, a ranch in Colorado for investment. Each property felt like picking at a wound, trying to fill a void that grew larger with every acquisition. Friends I'd neglected stopped calling. I'd see couples at restaurants, and their casual intimacy made me physically ill. I dated successfully, models, CEOs, socialites who understood my world, but none of them understood me. Her bookstore thrived. I'd have my assistant drive by sometimes, and through the tinted windows, I'd see what we could have built. She had added the literacy center. Community kids crowded the windows, reading, learning, growing. What we could have been haunted, every achievement. When Forbes named me America's most influential tech innovator, I felt invisible. The truth is, loving her taught me I'd been living someone else's life. I'd spent 15 years climbing a ladder just to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. She held up a mirror I'd been avoiding since my first million, and in that reflection, I saw a man I didn't recognize. All those years, I thought I knew what winning looked like. Corner offices, handshakes with presidents, seeing my face on magazine covers. But she showed me what losing looked like. Wearing $1,000 suits to impress strangers while being unable to look at yourself in the mirror without disappointment. After she left, I rewrote everything. Success wasn't about being the richest man in the room. It was about being the most present. It wasn't about power over others. It was about empowering others. She talked about her grandmother, who could barely read but knew every Bible verse by heart, who raised 5 kids while cleaning other people's houses. Her grandmother never owned property, never had a retirement account, never flew first class. But she was rich in ways I finally understood. In love given, in lives changed, in legacy that mattered. That's when I knew everything I'd been taught about success was a lie designed to keep us chasing ghosts. The ripple effect changed my company's DNA. I didn't just implement diversity programs. I restructured hiring to actively seek voices we'd been missing. I didn't just invest in Black businesses. I mentored founders who reminded me of her. Brilliant minds with big hearts who saw profit and purpose as partners, not enemies. My business ethics transformed from what can we legally do to what would make that woman who challenged me at the bookstore proud. Every quarterly report started, including metrics she would have cared about, lives impacted, communities served, sustainable growth versus exploitative profit. Living with this choice feels like a chronic condition. Some days I wake up proud of who I've become. Philanthropist, mentor, executive, who balances profit with purpose. Other days, I wake up thinking about what could have been. When I pass by couples sharing breakfast in cafes, I order my coffee to go. When I see fathers reading to their children in parks, I take the long way around. The ache never fully disappears. It just becomes your normal. But here's what keeps me going. Every life touched by the programs I've funded, every entrepreneur given a chance they wouldn't have had, every community center that bears someone's grandmother's name, that's our legacy, even if she'll never know it. Even if I'll never again hear her read poetry aloud or feel her hand in mine, I carry her wisdom forward. I learned that real wealth isn't counted in zeros after your net worth, but in the number of people whose lives are better because you were here. The choice I made cost me everything that mattered and gave me everything that lasts. That's the price of learning your soul's value after you've already sold it. If this story hit home, I need you to share it with someone who's chasing the wrong kind of success. Like, subscribe, and comment below. What would you sacrifice for the person who truly sees you? Don't wait until it's too late to realize what really matters. Thanks for listening to the most expensive lesson of my life.